All right, strap yourselves in, people. Final edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast before Super Bowl 57, and we've got a lot to break down here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. What's at stake? Who has the most at stake? Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs. What does this Super Bowl mean to all three of those entities? What are the keys to a Chiefs victory in this game? Best philosophy for winning a Super Bowl? Is it going all in? Is it doing whatever it takes for the franchise quarterback, playing for the long haul? Mahomes' performance in the past couple of Super Bowls haven't been up to his other performances. Does he have to be better in this one? Eagles pass rush versus Chiefs protection. Can it hold up? Expectations for Chris Jones in this game? Dominate? Back to the old playoff games? What's the biggest X factor? Who wins this game? We tackle it all on the latest edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
This is the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric is the senior VP of Research and Development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
That is right. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is on the air with 67% of it coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, where the Super Bowl will be played. And, of course, proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. You know, they're hiring right now for all positions. Project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members, starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience with PTO and insurance. That's paid time off for you that don't know the lingo. Insurance, among some other benefit packages. Check it all out at GannAsphalt.com for more information. And, of course, all your parking lot problems solved by Gann since 1994. Let's get things going. Jeff Chadiha, NFL Network, Eric Eager, Sumer Sports. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. And going at it a little bit early here as we're actually, when you catch the podcast, it's kind of like everybody's on the podcast. Normally we have the stream live, but because of the intense schedules of Jeff Chadiha, the inability to read a text of Eric Eager, we come to you early via the recording. That's going to go over big with Eric, I can already tell. Let's jump right into it. Why give Eric a chance to respond to that, Jeff? Let's talk about the topic, shall we? What's at stake? Who has the most at stake? What's at stake for Reid, Patrick Mahomes? The Chiefs as an organization joining the three championship club is something they can do, which is pretty rarefied air. What all do you think's at stake in this game?
All those things, I think first and foremost. I think joining the three championship club is a big deal. But for Andy Reid, I think he's got the most on the line in terms of legacy here. When you talk about this would be his fourth Super Bowl. If he ends up 1-3, that's not a good look for a coach who's as accomplished as he is. He's going to the Hall of Fame now. I think we can all agree with that. I think he'll might end up being top 3 in victories by the time he's done. But if you go 25% in this game, not a good look. I think Mahomes is safe. I had this conversation on Radio Row earlier this week. People were asking me where he's at legacy-wise. And as far as I'm concerned, if he lost this game, if his career ended tomorrow or on Sunday night, he would be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. I think that he's in that Kurt Warner category that he's been.
Do you hear that, people?
Yeah.
Do you hear that? Everyone always wants to try to paint it somehow. Jeff's a hater. Even if he loses, first ballot Hall of Famer, because I'm not even that far onto the side of things. So I want to make sure we underscore Jeff Chadiha, Mahomes, already first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm sorry, Jeff. I wanted to make sure we drew attention to that.
It's not what you say, Soren, it's what people hear. Even when you say it that way, they won't hear it that way. It'll still come off as some kind of backhanded, insult to the guy. Right. But yeah, he's already in that Kurt Warner, Terrell Davis category where he shines so bright such a short amount of time that, getting a championship, getting an MVP, Super Bowl MVP already. I think he'll be back in this game at some point, so I'm not worried about that. But certainly Andy Reid, to me, he has to get on the right side of the batting average in this game.
Wow, Jeff is underrating what Mahomes has left in the tank, is what Chiefs fans are going to kick away from that comment.
Oh my God! and you lead him there. By the way, with sweat dripping from your brow as you sprint up to your hotel room to jump on the pod.
Jeff doesn't do much on Twitter, but people in my mentions that come at Jeff get my smoke back. I will say that because he is very fair about the team. Are we missing this though? Because there was the Jeffrey Lurie comment that said Jalen Hurts has already shown all he needs to show for a contract extension. Is this not a must-win more for the Eagles than it is the Chiefs?
Well, I mean, great topic for our 2D podcast that we'll do sometime tomorrow when it's convenient for you. You're not living that down. Not at all. Dude, listen.
That's great, by the way.
Yes, there is. Listen. Clearly, Andy Reid and Patrick. It's a good point, Eric. They put a lot more equity in the bank, obviously, right?
But not only that, but we already and again, not to beat this topic to death, but the Chiefs, they're at Z in A to Z about team building, right? They have the ring from the rookie deal, they have the other Super Bowl appearance from the rookie deal. Now, I mean, this was supposed I hate to be a homer, and I don't think I'm a homer because I've been right this whole time. But this is the floor for the Chiefs, right? This was supposed to be the year. Look, in the middle of the season, we were all picking Buffalo, including me, right, as the best team in the AFC. Okay. This is the floor for the Chiefs. And
so then what is it? So then your answer is nothing. The answer to the question
it means
nothing.
A ton. Of course, every Super Bowl means a lot, but I think when we and I think it means a ton to Andy Reid, and I agree with Jeff. It means so much more to Andy Reid than it means to Mahomes, because I think Mahomes is going to be here for a decade longer than Andy Reid is. And I think Andy Reid has warts that transcend Mahomes. I mean, Andy Reid has the loss with McNabb in the Super Bowl. He's got the other 4 NFC title game losses. He's got the 2 seed loss with Alex Smith in 16. He's got the 17 game where they blew an 18-point lead at home. He's got more warts. This covers up more. Mahomes has a Super Bowl loss where everybody knew he was the best player in the field, but there was just no help, right? And Mahomes comes out of that game looking like he was an innocent bystander in the thing. We obviously have the AFC title game last year, which was a black mark on his blemish-free mark, ledger so far. Mahomes is fine. I agree with Jeff. It means a lot to Andy Reid, but I will say that this again, I feel like this is house money for the Chiefs this year. And I could be wrong, but almost everybody was this is a season where they're not being doubted that much, but they're not being thought of as this elite team like the Buffalo Bills. They're the number one. If you don't win a Super Bowl, it's a disappointment team. I don't think that was the case.
I hear what you're saying, and listen, let me attack it from the other direction, because it's kind of Chiefs, whatever. I think they if you look at by victories, they would move into a 4-way tie for 7th place, right? It would put them right now. They're down with the Colts, the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Bucks, the Rams. There's a whole bunch of teams that represent Broncos that represent 10 through 15. No, the Broncos actually have more. The Broncos have 3.
Oh, they do have 3. You're right. Yeah, they did. Yeah, that's right.
That's where they'd move up to. So they're in this group that's in the 10 to 15 range. They would move up into a 3-way tie for 7th with the Broncos and Raiders with 3. But I think 2 is definitely way better than 1, right? But 3 is okay, we got it. And obviously with this run, the door's still open. You're in the midst of what you're doing. And so, yes, there are going to be other opportunities, but if you're going to get to 5 or 6 or 7, you can't squander a lot of them, right? I know Tom Brady didn't win all of them, but he won 70% of them, right? And to your point, Jeff, that's where it does come back to Andy Reid. Yeah. His 333 win percentage looks a little flimsy. So I agree. If he gets to 500, he's now 2-1 with Patrick Mahomes. The McNabb Super Bowl looks look, he did it even with a guy who's not Hall of Fame caliber. But when he has Hall of Fame caliber, he cashes at the same level as everybody else. If he doesn't win, right now it's all love and, telling Michael Irvin, I love you, and everybody, oh, sweet grandpa, Andy Reid, everything. But if he loses, they are going to be on his ass.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question. And really, because he gets into a category where there's no other coach who has been that many times and has lost that many times, right? You either go and you lose them all.
Marv Levy and Bud Grant are 0-4.
Yeah. But who won one and then lost that many.
Yes.
Yeah. And so now you got your own little category for yourself, and you don't want that. But I would say to Eric, and I think that Mahomes will have opportunities. The thing is that how much longer is Travis Kelce going to be around? How much longer is Chris Jones going to be around? So let's not forget he's playing with some other great players, and they already got rid of one great player, Tyreek Hill. So that's really the test of time you've got to be able to manage. They've done a good job of getting good players. Can they get generational players moving forward? And that's when you start to look at what happened with Tom Brady as really being an issue, because they had to go out and get Darrelle Revis one year to win a championship. And obviously Gronkowski transformed himself into a great player, and
Gilmore
became
They had to get Gilmore to be. Yeah, I mean they had to pick their spots, but they still had to supplement the roster with brilliant guys. And you make a great point. I think what's being undervalued, no one's talking about this, but like Tyrann Mathieu was also let go, and I know Matthew wasn't great in 2021, but he was, like, the team voted him MVP the year they won the Super Bowl, even though obviously Pat's the MVP of the team, but like I think that what the Chiefs have accomplished this year is more notable. Even like we sort of ho-hum it with Mahomes because, obviously he's great. And, they did have to lean at the tape against the Bengals. But it's remarkable that they traded. I mean, they let go two guys who were top 5 players on their team.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And they may have to make a tough decision with Chris Jones coming up this offseason. And yes, they had a great draft, but 10 rookies making it and playing in a conference championship game the next year, you can't just count on that, right? Like, it's been a tremendous success rate. And I think Brett Veach and his staff have proven to be very good, but he's going to start losing more members of his staff. They're going to keep losing those guys. That's going to keep happening. And I think to your point about leaning at the tape against the Bengals, they're not always going to get the tape, right? Like the AFC, yes, they're the class of the AFC. They've re-solidified themselves as that. They're the team that they're shooting for. But the Bills and Bengals aren't that far back. I know their quarterbacks are going to get more expensive. It's going to get harder, but they're not that far back. And so, one of them figures to be the Roethlisberger, who goes 3 times and wins 2 of his own. One of them might be the Peyton Manning, who goes, 3 times or 4 times and wins 2 of his own. They're not always going to be there. So when you're here, you're
could be a Flacco in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. And there'll be the stray, the mutt. That makes his way in there, that just upsets you, and everybody
like a Nick Foles Eagles team is going to beat you in a bad day. Or I mean, I think the Bucs beating the Chiefs, that was like a bad, they were favored in that game and they got killed, and that happens. And the thing is I think the point is, like, each game has, I mean, even the Giants game in 2007 meant the world of the Patriots. That didn't mean they win, right? That, that just means all these Super Bowls you can't throw away Super Bowls. Like, that's just so like this matters a lot. I think, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but like, it matters more to the Eagles, in my opinion, in the same way that, like, when the Steelers played the Cardinals in January of 2009, I was like, I'm rooting for the Cardinals because I don't think they're ever going to get back. I think the Chiefs, it's a good bet that they'll get back in this area again. Maybe not. It might be a while. Who knows? Like, football is noisy, but that it's not licensed to lose a game, and that's not licensed to give less than your best effort if you're Andy Reid and so on. And I tend to believe, given what happened in the last Super Bowl, a lot of confounders with the Andy's son, and the car accident and the drinking, the driving, and all that stuff. Like, I do think he's going to be. I think he's really going to press it in this game. But that doesn't mean they're going to win either. Like, but it is a very, very important game to Reid's legacy.
Yeah, I would say that it's Andy Reid 1. It's the Chiefs 2, right? And I think it's Patrick Mahomes 3 because of how much of his legacy is already set, to Jeff's point about him probably already being a first ballot Hall of Famer. But injury to Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's proven that he's going to get hurt. He puts himself in harm's way. He holds the ball a long time. He's not as tall. I've been a big proponent that the taller you are, the easier it is to stay healthy, just because of the center of gravity. You don't get slammed down as hard. There's a lot of different things to it, and he's not the tallest. So He's a little bit more, I think, susceptible, even though he puts in a lot of time as a big, strong kid. He's not his length isn't that great, and I think that could be an issue. So you're here now. Get it done when you get here. I think is one of the big ones. What is the key to a Chiefs win, Jeff? What are you looking for that you think they've got to do if they're going to be successful?
Win in the trenches. That to me is the whole thing. And again, we talk so much about the quarterbacks, but this game is generally decided by what happens up front. And you go back to the Tampa game, that was an upfront outcome. You go back to the Niners game, that was an upfront outcome. They protected Mahomes in one game, they didn't in the other. And so the Eagles want to beat you up. They want to be the bully. They have the abilities to do it. They have the track record to do it. And they have the commitment to doing it. And so for me, this is the kind of game where you need to find out what Orlando Brown Jr. is made of, what Andrew Wiley's made of. I think Chris Jones is obviously been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, but this is a different kind of game for him now, where you've got to be, defending the run a lot more than the pass, and the guys around him up front. If this game ends up with the Eagles running the football 40 times and controlling the football for 35 minutes, the Chiefs aren't going to win. And so that's the first thing they got to do. They have to win on first down. They have to win at the line of scrimmage, and they have to know that this is going to be a cage match.
Okay. Eric, keys to the win?
Yeah, Jeff's right. I will say, though, that the bar is lower than maybe, so when they beat the Niners in the Super Bowl in 2019, their pass blocking grade in that game by PFF total was 68.6. That was a bottom third of the season for them. Their run defense grade was actually a 36.0. That was the second worst that they produced all year, if I'm not mistaken. Let me make sure. Yeah, second worst. So, they held up good enough. And even with Wasp, it was do we have time to run Wasp? Mahomes was under siege in that game against the Niners. They had enough, right? The Tampa Bay, the dam broke, and it was it was a cataclysmic. But I don't think the Chiefs have to be dominant up front on Sunday. I think that they have to hold up. And because I agree, if they hold up, then the differences in quarterback ability are just going to show themselves out so quickly. Because, if they could stop the run, Jalen Hurts was wincing throwing the football against the Niners. He was wincing throwing the ball against the Giants. And the Chiefs will win a route if the Eagles are in third and long all the time, right? I don't, Hurts is a good quarterback, but he's not healthy. And I think that's, going to help them. If they can hold up on the other side of the ball, Bradbury and Slay have had good seasons. But down the stretch, they've been weaker in the second half of game. The second half of the season they were in the first half where they were brilliant. And I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe it's Juju underneath or Valdez-Scantling over the top or Tony, horizontally or something. But they'll if they can protect Pat good enough, they'll get plays. So I agree with Jeff. It's up front. I don't think the bar is that high. I think if the Chiefs are a 4 out of 10 on both lines of scrimmages, they win a blowout on Sunday.
You said 4 out of 10?
Yeah, I think they're a 0 out of 10 against the Bucs on offense, and that was I think if they are passable,
you're not saying a 40% win rate. You're just saying on a scale of what, right?
Yeah.
I just want to be clear because you talked pass block win rate earlier.
Slightly above. If they're a little below average Sunday, that's going to be enough for them to be okay. And I went back and I grinded the film. Boys, I went back and watched that 49ers game. I thought the Niners game was the closest comparison to what we're getting here, right? Where you have, really stout defensive linemen. The linebackers for the Niners are actually better than the linebackers for the Eagles. But then you have a secondary full of guys who can hawk the ball, but are not athletic. Like Charvarius Ward, we know him. He's a good corner, but he's not super physically gifted. And Valdez-Scantling took him deep a couple times in that game. I think Bradbury and Slay are equally havable, but Andy came out and protected his tackles in that game with running back chips, and they attacked the defensive ends in the passing game with the running backs. And I think that they have to be similarly stout there. But it doesn't I don't think that Orlando Brown has to pitch a perfect game. I think that they have to hold up well enough. Yeah, of course.
I don't agree with that one, but you can go, Soren.
Well, I don't think he can pitch a perfect game. So if I think that's the scenario that they have to win, then they won't win. I agree with you. I don't think he has to. I'll say this. I think Bradbury's gettable. I think Slay. I'm a big Slay fan. I think he's really good, and I think it's going to be important for Mahomes to know who he's messing with when he sends the ball down the field. I think it's going to be important for them to get these receivers healthy. It looks good. Kadarius Toney's saying he's going to play.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney's, Sammy Watkins would go. He'd be active. And 14 snaps into it, he'd sit down. Kadarius Toney's whole career has been, it's not just the games he misses, it's all the games he leaves early. And the Chiefs got bit by that. And I'm not saying he wasn't legitimately hurt. He was, but let's be real. As tough as he runs, he probably needs to run less tough because he's fragile. He gets hurt all the freaking time. And they did not move the ball against the Bengals when all the receivers were down. They didn't. They really managed to cobble together, tape together a little drive that the personal foul, right call, set him up for a field goal. But the idea that they can run Noah Gray, Jody Fortson, and Marcus Kemp out there and go up and down the field in the Eagles is not going to happen. So
Soren, can I push back a little bit? So and I know coverage statistics game to game are extremely noisy, and I get that. But Darius Slay in coverage over the last, let's say from week 10 on, 103 passer rating into his coverage, 102 passer rating into his coverage, 92 passer rating into his coverage. There was a game, the 39.6, that was an 0 for 1, 97.9, 118.1, 102.5, 118.8, 116.7, 65.6, which is the Giants and Daniel Jones, and 112.5 last week. Again, it was just on one. So again, some of this is noisy, but if you look at Slay, this early in the season, if you look early, these are the passer ratings into Slay's coverage: 92, 0, 68, 0, 101, 0, 80, 39. And so, I think, I do think that this Eagles defense, I think the Eagles defense is very good, but I also think that they're trending in a direction that is not necessarily the best direction. And the only reason we haven't noticed it is because the 49ers played without a quarterback and the Giants also play without a quarterback.
Well, we've covered the atrocious quarterbacks they've played and how much we think it's benefited their sack total. They went from 29 last year to 70 this year. They're definitely better. Hassan Reddick is a huge addition to them. I get all that. I do think protection is important, and I'm not trying to say Slay is Sauce Gardner. I just think you need to know where you're going with the ball. I agree with Jeff that the Eagles defense is one that can get you, and especially if you're under duress and you start flinging the ball around. I mean, listen, he's 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in Super Bowls. Yeah. That's real. We're going to talk about that a little bit better, but that's real. So you start getting a little haphazard with the ball, and I think it could go south bad. He has had a bad half of football against the Bengals. It has now happened. We've seen it, and one bad half was enough for them to lose. So I do think that's real in it, but I think they're going to have to mix up the run. I think they're going to have to keep the defensive line off balance with shovel passes and draws, and they're going to have to pop some people along the way with, maybe some crackback blocks, which I know are illegal, but you're going to have to get some guys set up going the wrong way. You're going to have to get them looking around. Where are they coming at me? Are they coming at my legs? Is this a screen? If they're just feeling comfortable, it's a long day for the Chiefs. Now, Andy Reid's really good at that. So I think there's a lot of reason to believe that they can do that, but it's not a for certain in it. And I think, they clearly have to play the run well, which they've done a good job of playing the run this year. They're capable of it, but this is a outstanding running team that then takes the run, play actions off of it, shows run on the pass and has the weapons to beat you if you do get off kilter. So yeah, I think, it's take the diaper off time for the DBs in the back, because I think there's a lot of work to be done up front as well. Jeff, you had, I know you had a little bit more. Did you want to?
No, I was just going to say, I think that going back to what Eric said about the offensive line, I chuckle because Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown Jr. have been whipping boys all season on this podcast and throughout, the Chiefs' kingdom. And so it's convenient now that people want to just act like, okay, now these guys can handle it. I remember Von Miller blowing past Andrew Wiley. I remember the Tennessee Titans having their way with this offensive line. And so I remember Chandler Jones and Max Crosby doing that when they were together with the Raiders. And so for me, that's the scary part, is that, and you're right. I think if Andy comes out and he runs the football consistently and he establishes the screen game and the quick game, I think they're going to have a game plan for all that stuff. But if they're getting into long yard situations, or if it's just, hey, we want to pass, it could be a long day with this group. And keep in mind, Hurts is banged up. Mahomes is banged up too, right? We don't know where he's going to be at. Even though he went out and played, he was limping around and hobbled as well. And you've got big guys around your legs and a guy, Ndamukong Suh, who is known for doing dirty stuff. It's not outside the realm of imagination that he gets banged up in this one as well.
Yeah. That's a great point. We're proudly brought to you here at the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, serving the entire Kansas City metro area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. If your business needs any work done on the parking lot, striping, just a hole, or if you need the whole parking lot, they make your parking lot problems disappear. Been doing it since 1994. Free consultation, no commissions, in-house crews, and hiring. If you want to be a part of the best parking lot team in Kansas City, you can go online to GannAsphalt.com. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, paid time off, insurance. It is a great place to work. Go to GannAsphalt.com for more information. What is the best philosophy for trying to win a Super Bowl? Like, is there a narrative other than rookie quarterback versus not rookie quarterback, right? Like, I guess maybe that's all that's going to get the pub, Eric, if the Eagles win. Well, here it is. Got to have that. Maybe it's the Chiefs that'll be rewriting a narrative if they win, but whether it's the all-in approach, which we saw from the Rams, that's not the Chiefs' approach this year. The long-haul approach, whatever it takes to the franchise quarterback, what's the narrative that's going to come away from either one of these two teams?
Well, this year, it's very much the two pillars of team building that I think folks like me would always say are the ways to go, right? You either have the quarterback on a rookie deal gets you a great surplus, or you have the infinitely valuable quarterback that gets you a great surplus, no matter what he costs. But I think the other part that's hidden is roster resiliency and the power of numbers. And what I mean by the power of numbers is throwing numbers at problems, right? So, and let's take a step back and look at the Eagles for a second, right? So the Eagles, 2 years ago, there was the article in The Athletic about how much of a joke they were, how much Doug Peterson had, stopped listening to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, how much of a joke Wentz was and how much he, couldn't handle having Jalen Hurts in the building and all this stuff. But you ultimately look at it and you're like, threw numbers at quarterback, right? Like Jalen Hurts was not their preferred quarterback. They Carson Wentz in 2019 he had the most yards in NFL history for a quarterback who didn't have a 500-yard receiver on his team. And, they made the playoffs. He started a playoff game. It was only the playoff game he'll ever start in his career, probably. And, and they drafted Jalen Hurts. And like that, everybody was like, well, where the hell is he going to play? All blah, 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 right? In 2020, and I actually was on his show today, Rick Spielman's cackling like he, he's listening to stand-up comedy when the Eagles draft Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL. And what does Howie Roseman do? Well, he just drafts another wide receiver in the next year, and then he trades a first-round pick for the wide receiver at one of the most important positions in football. He just threw numbers at the problem. And so Jalen Reagor is a failure. He just writes off for a fifth-round pick to the Vikings. They threw numbers at the problem in a way that was a little different and maybe could have been more of they're more liberal with the dollar allocation. The Chiefs threw numbers. We thought about this like 11 months ago. The three of us were sitting there like, what the heck? Like, Charvarius Ward's gone. Rashad Fenton sucks. Mike Hughes is leaving. Who's going to play corner for the Chiefs? And the Chiefs are like, okay, well, fine. We're going to go Najee Johnson, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, and McDuffie. And, I remember after the draft, Petro, you're like, McDuffie better work because it's 2 draft picks for one.
Sure.
And all this. And he has, don't get me wrong, but you could also see a path where like those other guys buffered the risk of McDuffie because they threw numbers at a problem. They threw numbers at defensive line, Michael Dana, Carlos Dunlap, Frank Clark on a reduced deal, Brandon Williams, Kylan, like, all of this is to say that roster resiliency and throwing numbers at the problem where you don't have brilliance is really, I think, a winner and even down to the Eagles taking Sue and Linval Joseph off the street when their run defense was cracking, right? Having the ability to do that, to me, is the story of the Super Bowl from a roster standpoint.
What's your roster takeaway, Jeff?
Well, I think that the universe is changing to a certain degree. And I think what you're seeing is more general managers recognizing that it's very difficult to find a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Joe Burrow or a Justin Herbert, whoever the young guy you want to build around, Trevor Lawrence. And so I think it's more sensible to do what the Eagles are doing, which is to say, let's take our chances when we have the opportunities to take chances and take risks. And so there's a lot more comfort in knowing that, as Eric said, if you fail with a first-round pick, whether that's the second overall pick like Carson Wentz or 21st overall pick like Jalen Reagor was, whatever he was in the 20s, no one's going to kill you for it. And really, no one's really going to kill you for going 4-12 if you win a championship, or 4-13 now if you win a championship. And so there's a lot more of a belief that whatever it takes to get that ring, it's worth doing, even if it means a couple years where there's a lot of doubt, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of frustration. And the Eagles are the epitome of that. The Rams are going through that now with that 5-12 season they just had. Well, they say, well, a year ago we were riding high, and we still feel the thrill of that. And we still feel like we can get back to that place if we make the right moves. I don't think with the Chiefs, as great as Mahomes is, one of the most underrated part about their success this year, they had to have three great players play great. Kelsey played great, Chris Jones played great, Mahomes played great. And you still have to have stars doing star-like stuff. And what the Eagles have said, what the Rams have said, let's get as many stars as we can get, have them do star stuff, and we'll figure out the rest as we move forward. So I guess it's a long way of saying that being able to compete year in and year out is becoming a little bit overrated in the NFL. I think ultimately, if you win a championship and you're able to point to that at some point, that feels better than being able to say, yeah, we were in the championship game one year, or we won the whatever our division 5 or 6 times. Like, that doesn't matter as much anymore.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I think you're right, Jeff. Like, I think when you talk about, I think with the Chiefs, like teams like the Chiefs and the Patriots and the Broncos or the Colts when they had Manning, when you have that that ace quarterback, that should be your goal. Like, when you're thinking about roster resiliency, your goal should be competing every year. If you are one of the big refrains where people have, and again, I'm not advocating for this, but like, let's say somebody says, look, you got to churn and burn on Jalen Hurts, right? Trade him to a team, go back in the draft, use your 2 first-round picks and whatever you get for Hurts, they go back, and people be like, well, you just spend all this time, and it's like, yeah, but is he the quarterback that can consistently get you there? If the answer is no, then just keep, because like as you said, you chase this dream of being consistently relevant, and it's just not achievable for most teams, right? If you don't have an A1 quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback, then you're just even look at like you brought up the Rams, you're a great example. Like, Stafford's a good quarterback, pretty good. Your Lions, like, they had their years, right? They had the 3 out of 4 years where they had winning records, but it's just not good enough to compete with for a decade, right? The Rams win a Super Bowl, and the next year he breaks down because he always breaks down. And so it's like the teams that don't have the Mahomeses or the Mannings back in the day or the Bradys back in the day, like, they should be thinking, let's push it all in for a year or 2 at a time, bleed out, and especially if you have a front office like the Eagles who are resiliently covering their losses, and not succumbing to sunk costs. That's how you should do it, right? Like, the Eagles won a Super Bowl in 2017. They're a 4-win team in 2020. Now they're back, and it's because they were they didn't care so much about being there all the time. They just care about being there every once in a while.
Right. I think, recognizing when you got to step back, I think that's one thing I take from the Eagles. I think that's, Eric, your point about, if it's not there, don't push a bad situation, blow it up and start over again. And Jeff, you said that the teams are going to be more willing to do that, right? In that run, a couple things that, and I think there are a lot of things. Like, one, you don't have to win the opening press conference because Nick Sirianni was a disaster there. That's one thing I've definitely taken away from. If I hear a bad opening press conference, I'm not going to kill a guy and say it can't work. But I think the fact that it was reiterated, if you see a quarterback and you think he's got something, it doesn't matter what you have at quarterback, maybe short of Mahomes, Rodgers in his prime, like best of the best. I can see passing on a Hurts or passing on a Rodgers if you have Patrick Mahomes. But I remember when the Chiefs passed on Aaron Rodgers to take Derek Johnson, a guy who's going to be in the Chiefs Ring of Honor, because they had Trent Green, but Trent was 35 years old. And like, if you have that, it's not like, well, no, this is what we need right now. you never, ever pass on a quarterback if you think he's got ability. I think that's number one. Jalen Hurts has ability. And then the commitment to, if you don't have the guy that can just drop back and spin it, Jalen Hurts has just validated the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills approach with their quarterbacks of running them, of making them a threat, because that is what has made their offense dynamic. And there's been this narrative, and if the Eagles win, it's going to empower even more, and it's going to help even more running quarterbacks, because the narrative has been, because the Bills and Allen and Lamar Jackson haven't even been able to get to the Super Bowl, that no, that's great for the regular season, but you can't play that way in the playoffs. Well, the Eagles have, and if they win, it's going to empower that even more. I think they'll eventually realize you do that for one contract and maybe a couple of franchise tags and then get the hell out of there because they're beat to hell. But that's not a bad strategy to draft a guy on a 5 to 7 year plan when you can't find the guy that you're sold on is the 20-year plan. And I think that's going to be one of the
and it's the next, and not to interrupt, but it's the next evolution of the quarterback position. Like if we normalize,
but let me be clear. Yes, I think the future is the guy that runs like a combination of Carl Lewis. I can't think of the sprinter.
Michael Johnson.
Whoever the guy
Usain Bolt.
Usain Bolt. Yes. The idea of Usain Bolt with Mahomes' arm and Josh Allen's physicality, Cam Newton's physicality. We can draw what the perfect thing is.
I'm not even.
But it's subject, because Patrick Mahomes can put a shoulder down and knock some people down. He doesn't do it, right? It's the mindset of subjecting them to the hits.
But
right?
it's not only
that. Athletes are better than non-athletes. It's saying, I will forego the last 10 years of this guy's potential career, because what we need to do is be this multidimensional threat now, even if it knocks this guy out.
But it also opens up, and what I want to see, because what I hate is a guy like Jameis Winston throwing for 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and again, we're not ignoring the interceptions, and getting like a $6 million deal the next year, right? Because there is no middle class quarterback contract, right? Like what I would like to see is, like, again, if we normalize the Jalen Hurts thing, which is to say he's good now, right? And then let's trade him to a team that's a quarterback away. Because there are going in this era, right? There are going to be teams like the Jets who have built, the Jets have the most, Pro Football Reference approximate value among their draft picks from this year. Chiefs are second, the Jets are tied for second with the Chiefs. But there are going to be opportunities where a guy like Hurts is available in the open market, and there are going to be multiple teams who are a quarterback away. And what I'd like to see is those quarterbacks be properly priced so that those teams can be competitive and not have to like mortgage their future to bring in Russell freaking Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. And I want that, because look, if Hurts can make $30 million a year and everybody else is making 50, then he's probably a value, right? But if he's making 50, then it doesn't make sense. But back to the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's and I think that's a good point on because now if he wins the Super Bowl, he's not going to be viewed as a $30 million guy.
No. We're gonna have expectations of him that are going to hurt.
Yes,
that are going to hurt that position, our outlook on players who play the position like that, and it's not his fault; it's the market's fault.
Jeff, how much better does Patrick Mahomes have to play this time around than he's played the last two Super Bowls?
Oh, he has to be lights out. And there are a lot of reasons why he played the way he did in the past two games that we've already covered. But again, I go back to the start of the postseason. I've said it then, and I'll say it again. For them to win the championship, he's got to play at a super high level every game he plays at. And he's done it for two games. And he's done it on half, on one leg. This is the game where he's going to have to really even blow us away even more. Because I don't think that he got rattled in those previous games. I think he played good defenses, and good defenses have game plan. When you get to this game, defensive coordinators are saying, we're not going to let you beat us. We're not going to let what you do great happen. And so, they won those championships because Chris Jones played well, because the defense played well, because, Williams took off and had a great game as a runner in that game against the 49ers. But yeah, this is a game where he's going to have to be at his best because of everything we just said, that he's going to be under siege. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him. He's playing a defense that's going to have really good cover corners. And I feel as if, like you said, Soren, I'm just not certain about where the Chiefs are going to be at receiver-wise. And so if the Eagles are able to take away two options for Mahomes in a game like this, you're not running the football effectively, it could be a long day for him. So, yeah, he's going to have to – and he has done this throughout the course of the year, by the way. Talking to the people last night at opening night about it and the way he's evolved, he deserves a ton of credit for doing a lot of subtle things that people haven't really paid attention to. Just how much he's worked at making sure he's keeping up with his footwork and how much he's paid attention to going through progressions. He had a quote earlier this year where he talked about having all these different guys involved and no Tyreek and having no Tyreek there forced him to really trust the offense. And so he's been doing that all year long. You're gonna have to do it again this week.
Yeah. I think that there's some cues in the betting market, though, that the Chiefs are going to have their stable of receivers just because, and I tweeted this out, but like yesterday early, Justin Watson was about 4-1 to score a touchdown in the game, which is pretty high for Justin Watson. And by midday, he was about 15-1 to score a touchdown. And then they started hanging, so Juju's receiving yardage prop was 33.5 yards, which is not that much, but he actually hasn't gone over that in all but one game for the last 5 or 6. Now it's about 40, and Valdez-Scantling about 40, which frankly is a bit high. Tony's at about 20. So they started the betting markets, which generally know how healthy these players are going to be earlier than we do, even in the media. Like they started giving us clues that the Chiefs are going to be about as healthy as we could have hoped for this game at the receiver position. Just kind of a little aside there.
Yeah, I think it's of note. The other thing that I think is of note, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Is that a great day? This is not Patrick Mahomes. I'm making a point. Is that a great day for a quarterback? 283, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions.
Solid day.
Solid day, but 263, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. How's that?
Solid.
Because that's the 2 quarterbacks last year, right? It was this epic game. That's Stafford first, and then Joe Burrow. And I go back and look, Patrick Mahomes' day started out with 2 interceptions, came back with 2 touchdowns late to balance the ledger, 286, 2-2. The other side, 219, 1-2 from Garoppolo. Now that's Garoppolo. You'd be like, well, this guy's better. Okay, Tom Brady. Now this was a little different because Tom Brady didn't have to put his foot on the accelerator because the Bucs were getting it all day. He threw for 201 yards, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. Again, it's Tom Brady. Is Jalen Hurts going to spin 387 for? I mean, went 387 against the Chiefs in 21.
Doesn't have to.
Yeah, they run more because I think they have to run more. If they can't run, he will have to. And last year he could, but I think that game, maybe as much as any of the other ones, was why the defensive backs were such an investment this year, and why it's like, listen, we can have a guy that we think is just okay, Jalen Hurts, who's proven to be more than that. No. We can have that guy light us up without Tyrann Mathieu, without Dan Sorensen, without Charvarius Ward. I think that game, as much as any, empowered them to say, let's reshuffle the defense. But my point is, the Super Bowl is rarely your 158 passer rating game. I mean, because the other team's good, to your point, Jeff. Like, there usually isn't a slappy defense that's out there.
Well, especially if the game is close, right? Like with Brady's best statistical game was the Falcons one, right? Where they had to come from behind, and then the Seahawks game where they had to come from behind by 10. He threw a couple picks in that game. If the game's close, to your point, Petro, and the ball is slicker too, like you have like some of those things, and that's why first quarter unders are a bet. By the way, if people want to bet Jalen Hurts under passing yards, if you can get it above 240, I think is a really good bet, because I just think Jalen Hurts doesn't throw for a lot of yards in this game. Like they win and he doesn't throw for a lot of yards, or they lose and he can't throw for a lot of yards, because we've seen what has to happen when he's in a pure drop back game. But yeah, I mean,
I just before you get too far from it, what did Tom Brady do in that Falcon game? Don't look it up. Just tell me what you remember. What are the statistics?
Okay, so he had a touchdown.
I was going to say his best game was the Eagles game, but go ahead.
Yeah, he had a great game because he had 500 yards in that game, right? Yeah. The Eagles game.
In this one, he had 466, but only 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, because he still got
James White. James White had rushing touchdowns in that game, right? That was
but and Tom played fine, but like this idea that you're gonna have this, one of those magical, 475, 5-0 with a rushing touchdown, they don't usually come in these games. That's not usually where this ends up happening. And to Jeff's point about the 17 game, we're in defeat. It was all, of course, now my NFL Jesus doesn't want to work now. That game he had all the yards, but he also had problems. He had picks. He had, it just, you're going to have to. This is a game that I think the quarterbacks, if you look at a game and go, our quarterback has to be perfect, you're probably not winning, right? Because you're going to have to take on water and keep the ship afloat. That's how it happens.
Here's the question I have, though, because this is where the differences between the three of us have emerged the most strongly this year. Do we think that Chiefs from 2 to 53 are a liability in this game?
I do not. I'll answer first. I do not think it is a liability. I think that they're bested by the Eagles 2 to 53. Maybe not to the degree, and maybe this is my homerism, not just wanting to believe reality, but not to the degree that I think it's being painted. But I don't think their D-line is a liability. I don't think their linebackers are a liability. I don't think their secondary is a liability. I don't think the offensive line is a liability, but it needs chips and help on the tackles. So if you want to say the tackles are a liability, the combination of Orlando Brown and Andrew White, I might say that's a liability. Tight ends, the receivers, there's no Tyreek Hill, but not a liability. Running backs, not a liability. So no, I don't think it's fair to say that the 2 to 50.
Yeah. So I sort of, and again, I'm not strong. Like, look, I'm not going to give away the game here, but like, I thought the Chiefs were much better than the Bengals. I don't think they're much better than the Eagles, but I will say, like, I think that we are overstating a little bit, much like we did, I think, in the Niners game. Like, I thought the Chiefs 2 to 53 were much closer to the Niners in 19 than everybody, when we were on Radio Row, right, was giving them credit for. And the reason that they lost to the Bucs, I think, is we overestimated 2 through 53 that year, right? Like, the offensive line was so bad that but I think that this Chiefs team, especially now, and Jalen Watson said, they was like, well, what do you think of all the rookies? Like, what rookies? Like, at this point, they've played all the, like, this isn't like Trevor. This isn't like.
I get tired of that.
This isn't
a 10-year vet. I've seen it all, and
well, this isn't like Trevarius Ward playing against the Patriots in 18. Like, these guys have played all year. Like, they're not. This isn't like we're throwing this guy into the fire and he's a true rookie. Like, everybody that's going to play as a young player for the Chiefs has played all year.
Yeah, they're better. They survived the fire against the Bengals. But the word today that last night that L'Jarius Sneed was going to play was welcome news for the Kansas City Chiefs defense for sure.
Yeah. It's funny because that opening night last night, I was at both teams coming out, and it struck me when the Chiefs were out just how young they really are. Like, when you're seeing all these guys in one place, and just how much it was like, hey, we're here, this is phenomenal, and just like all the videotaping and on the phones, and they look like a young team. And when the Eagles were out, they were much older and much more like, okay, this is great, but when we start playing the game, and that's not. There's nothing I'm trying to draw from that except that it felt as if I could see the Chiefs' younger players feeling like this is an amazing thing and not having that same sense of we have to take advantage of this in the way that 2019 group felt. You know what I mean? Sometimes you get born on third base and you think you hit a triple.
Yeah, and it's because they know the great Patrick Mahomes is on their team, and he wasn't the great Patrick Mahomes then. And maybe it's Pat will handle it. He'll do it. That's a great point. Jeff, how about the pass rush? Is it as simple as Andy Reid's got to bring out all the tricks in his bag to keep it offset, or is that what's ultimately going to have you picking the Eagles?
Well, I think the thing about pass rush, you have to get in a situation where you can rush the passer. And so the Chiefs have to find a way to stay out of obvious passing situations. I mean, it's very simplistic to say it, but, I look back at Andy and the first drive of the Bengals game. You come out 3 passes, 3 and out. You just can't do that in this game. You can't have situations where you are so gung-ho to throw the football that you put your team into a position where they're losing a possession they need to have. Like, every possession in this game is going to matter against the Eagles because they may end up getting 8 instead of 12. Let's say they start getting turnovers or whatever. The Eagles are really good at not turning the football over. I mean, the games they've lost this year, I think 8 of their turnovers, I think they had like 13 turnovers. 8 came in of 2 of those losses.
Yeah.
And so they've got to be mindful of that. But yeah, I mean, Andy's a smart coach, and we've seen him find ways to offset defenses before. And so I totally feel like with 2 weeks to prepare for this game, they will have a good plan. They will execute that plan. The question comes, what happens once people start adjusting and they start seeing these different ways come at you? There are no plays off with this front. And so that's what I sit and wonder, like, what's going to happen when they are in 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 9 and a couple drives go by. Now, Patrick, again, has proven that he's not going to press and get frustrated and try to force things. But, again, there's going to be a lot. I think within the first couple drives, we'll know what the tone of this game is going to be and how that will play out. Just as with the Bucs game. I think you will know if they have an answer for it or if it's going to be a long day.
Eric?
Well, I think Jeff nailed it. I think, I think that's a very reasonable person could come to the conclusion that a blowout in either game. And in fact, I think you're going to know right. Like, this is, again, we don't give out betting advice on the show that much, but like, this is a live betting game, right? Like, you're going to know basically early in the game whether or not the Chiefs have an answer. And offensive line answers. I think last Super Bowl we saw the Bengals had a really good answer for the Rams front for the first half of the game. And then they were like, oh, we're good. And then they got demolished in the second half. It doesn't go the other way, I don't think, right? Like, you can't – it's really hard early if you get beaten up front and you do not have the answers built into your game plan, you're screwed, right? So I think we'll know early. I also think in the same regard, again, this is a team, top 10 in the league in yards per play, top 10 in the league in yards per pass attempt allowed. The run game is kind of middle of the pack defensively. If they get good games out of the Saunderses and the Williamses and the Noddies, and they get or the Eagles, granted, let's even throw this other. If the Eagles drop an early down pass, right, and they get into 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 9, and the Chiefs can, basically play Hurts and cover, then and they get a couple stops and the Chiefs get a couple touchdowns. Like, I think both blowouts are fairly, not, obviously favorites, but like, if I were betting this game, I would bet Chiefs -6.5 at a plus price or Eagles -6.5 at a plus price, because I think this game widens. I don't think these teams are equally matched. I just don't know which side is better. That's kind of like the way I sort of see this.
That's interesting. By the way, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, now hiring. So if you are looking, all positions, project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, crew members, starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience and paid time off, insurance, among the other benefits. Just check it out at GannAsphalt.com. Let me ask you this. Chris Jones, your expectation for Chris Jones. He will dominate. He needs to dominate. What kind of game do you expect from him, Jeff, and how important is it?
He needs to dominate. I don't think he will dominate. I think he'll be solid. I don't think he'll play a bad game. But I was talking to Trent Dilfer last night, the old Ravens quarterback and the current Alabama Birmingham head football coach.
Right.
And he
thoroughly
made
unimpressed quarterback analyst also.
That's
right.
That's right. And he made a really good point about the Eagles offensive line. Not just that the Eagles offense, not that they're diverse and they're really talented, but their offensive linemen are really smart. And so you've got people up there who can have answers for Chris Jones. So I feel like this is a game more so where he's going to have to deal with the double teams, and the guys around him are going to have to really make hay. Like Frank Clark, George Karlaftis, Saunders, Noddy, all those guys are going to have to really play at a high level because they're going to take away Chris Jones. And they have the abilities to do that with what they have up front.
Yeah, I think I love what Jeff just said there, Eric, because I think that's where they go. They say, we're not going to lose to Chris Jones. They're a team that I think last year found themselves after the slow start by acknowledging who they are. We're going to run the quarterback. We're going to pound the rock. He wanted to be multiple. He wanted to channel his inner Todd Haley, who I know made a big impact on Nick Sirianni as a coach, and just spin it all over the place. And he went
in a good way, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, absolutely. And Todd Haley can coach football. I mean, he knows some things, and he taught this kid some things, as did Frank Reich and others that he was around. But he embraced who they really are. Like, I can't stress how much I think in sports, even if you coach a little league team, you may watch the Jayhawks and think, I want to play just like Bill Self does. Well, if you ain't got, don't be running a high-low with the shrimp team. Play Mike Anderson, 40 minutes of hell, defend, take the ball. Like you got to be honest about what you got. And I think the Eagles are a great example of that. They found that last year and they have not let go of it since. That means, hey, we can't throw it 50 times a game, so we're going to run it. We're not going to go away from it. And I think they'll do that. They'll acknowledge Chris Jones is better than one of our guys. I will say this, 44 sacks they gave up, 44. I mean, their quarterback will go down in this game. The Chiefs will get there, but I think Jeff's right, Eric. It's gonna be a fantastic day for Chris Jones, splitting double teams, relentless second effort after a coverage is there. If he's gonna have a big statistical day, because I think they are smart to say you're not gonna beat us, and it's gonna be the supporting cast that has to get it done.
Yes, and I think and again, this all gets back to, where did Jones get his first sack last Sunday? He got it playing left defensive end over that stiff of a right tackle playing for the Bengals, right? Where did he get the final sack? He got it, I believe it was right over, it was, again, playing edge, right? Like they need to get the Eagles into long yardage situations where Jones has a physical mismatch against the tackle, and then they can start to win, right? Isaac, they can get Karlaftis against the guards, right? And Karlaftis against the guards is probably a good matchup, right? Dunlap over the center is probably a good matchup, right? Because Kelsey's a little smaller and like that kind of thing. They have to Jeff's initial point, they have to get early down stops in the run game. And if they can do that, then they can be multiple enough. If it's 3rd and 4 and Chris Jones has got to play 3-tech every 3rd and 4, much like that first Bengals game, the last Chiefs game they've lost, they're screwed, right? Like I don't think that they can rush straight up with their front four. We're in the positions that they have to play to win. They have to be able to kind of run those goofy fronts with no threat of a run, and that's gotta be how they win. But those 3rd downs are going to be won on 1st and 2nd down.
The Eagles guards are more run blockers than they are pass blockers, though. I mean, I do think Chris Jones's location is going to be D tackle. I don't think you put him out at end, because I think unless you're just like, listen, those guys are good, but our guy's better, and he's just got to get it done. But I think Chris Jones on the guards is what you want to do. Now, does that mean Jason Kelsey's with them every time? Yep. Then this is Steve Spagnuolo blitz day. This is okay. Right. Is Nick Bolton sliding through that gap? Is Justin Reid coming through that gap? Like if the Chiefs have 6 sacks or 7 sacks, if they have a big day, I would probably expect that more of the sacks come from away.
And that gets down then to tackling, which the Chiefs did a marvelous job of tackling against the Jaguars and the Bengals. The Eagles have pretty good tight end. Goddard's a top 5 tight end in the league, and Sanders is a elusive running back out of the backfield. Gainwell, Boston Scott, they have if they're going to bring players, they're going to be one-on-one matchups with Willie Gay and Nick Bolton and guys like that in the flats and in the middle of the field, and they have to make tackles. And they made tackles last week, to their credit, and they're going to have to make tackles this week. And the same thing's true about Hurts. They're going to have to make tackles in the open field today on Sunday, like they haven't ever all season.
X factor, what is it in this game, Jeff?
Combination of Antonio Brown and Devontae Smith. They won't be talked about as much as the other people we're talking about, but those guys against the Chiefs corners, I think, you look at their numbers, they're not Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but both guys are 90 catch, 1,000-yard receivers. Brown's their team record, almost 1,500 yards catches, 1,500 yards of receiving yards. Hard to do. If they get one-on-one matchups, that the Eagles have to cash on those. If they can't cash on those, Eric points, if you're missing some throws, and Hurts missed A.J. Brown, I think the last game on a potential touchdown pass, that's going to hurt the Eagles' chances of winning this game. So they get one-on-one matchups, but I expect they will. If the Eagles hit those, they're probably going to win the game.
Eric, X factor?
I think it's JuJuSmtih-Schuster. I think that there's going to be a lot of zones against the Chiefs on Sunday. I think that, eyes are going to be on Valdez-Scantling because of the game he had against the Bengals. I also think that he's going to be running the safeties off. I think Tony is going to be marginally effective. Kelsey's going to be who he is. I think if Juju can navigate the middle of the field and open up the spaces that Kelsey can't, I think the Chiefs are going to be very effective offensively.
I like that. I would cop out and say the health of Jalen Hurts because they haven't really had big passing days in this postseason, but they haven't had to, and that doesn't mean he can't if he needs to. But I do. Everybody sees the grimaces, and is he like just waiting for surgery, like moments after either the season or the parade is over? I think that's of note, but I think the X factor is Steve Spagnuolo. This has to be his day because he's got to know when to hold him, know when to fold him. He's got to know when to come after him. I do think that they're going to have to get pressure, and I don't think they're going to be able to just rely on the D-line. D-line's better. I think he needs to be careful about coming with, 2 extra guys. He's got to come with 1 extra guy, and it's got to be dialed up, and it's got to be something they haven't shown, and it's got to be effective a lot of the time because I'm with you, Jeff. I don't think you want A.J. Brown running loose in your secondary. Right? The Chiefs are a good tackling secondary, and that is one of the things – that they really changed. With these young guys, one, they can run guys down from behind. So if they get beat, it's not like, bye-bye, like we can't catch up to you. They can make a mistake and have it cost them 40, not 70 in a touch, and then circle the wagons and try to hold them to a field goal. They're better as a defense that way this time. But I think the X factor is Steve Spagnuolo. He needs to have a day like he had against the Patriots in the undefeated season Super Bowl with the Giants, right? That's the year he had the Giants defense was against the undefeated team. Yeah. All right. Finally, who wins? Jeff, you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, I go back and forth with this every day. Like I said, if you ask me tomorrow, I probably have a different answer. Eagles, I like right now. Again, not knowing exactly where Juju's at, which I think is big. Not knowing for sure where Kadarius Toney's at, which I think is big. I feel like the Eagles do a lot of things well that give the Chiefs problems. The mobile quarterback, offensive line is strong with the run game, the pass rush on the edges, being able to attack Brown and Wiley. I think that's stuff that has, throughout this season, has been consistently a red flag for the Chiefs. And so I think it's a close game. I think the Chiefs have a great chance of winning it, and would not shock me if they won it. But I'll go Eagles 24-23.
Eric?
Damn it, Jeff. You picked – that's what I picked on air today, the whole day. So for the people who want to keep it now. Look, I like that. I like an under game. I like it going under 51 for a lot of reasons. I think the point spread is like, I respect the market this week. I don't think there's any shenanigans going on there. I think that the Eagles are there. There's no shame in losing to the Eagles if you're the Chiefs. Since Jeff went 24-23 Eagles, I will say 24-23 Chiefs to sort of balance the score here. But I did pick that earlier today, Jeff. And so that's, I'm trying to stay consistent. I'm not trying to give out, so I can, bat 500 here and keep my sanity.
Okay.
This is going to stun you people. I know you don't see this coming here, but I'm going to take the Chiefs by 2 touchdowns. Go big or go home.
That's right.
Wait a second.
That kind of year. Why change now?
Yeah.
When I did that, I was ripped to shreds. When you do it.
I'm bold. I am the bold of the red, gold, and
You're
bold.
Nick Bolden.
That's what I am. Here's how I arrive at that. I don't think Jalen Hurts is healthy. I do think the Chiefs defense is an underrated commodity. I think the defensive backs are underrated. I think the offensive line of the Eagles is overrated. Not that they're going to get trounced or they suck. I just think this idea that they're one of the great offensive lines of all time, no, I'm not buying that. And I think that there is an element, I'll go to something Eric said last week, and that is Andy Reid's at his best when he doesn't have the best quarterback, right? Like, I think he's got to dial some stuff up. And I think he'll be a little more diabolical in this game. And I think Patrick Mahomes found out that he can be pretty good when he stays within the framework of things. I feel like this is one where the Chiefs can get out in front. And if they do get out in front, I think that may be the key. Whoever gets up top first wins it. The Chiefs are better equipped to come back, theoretically, if they can protect their quarterback. I mean, but I do think that this is one that the experience is going to play. I'm going to rest my hat on quarterback with experience against a quarterback without experience in the Super Bowl, 15-7 overall. I think that is of note, and I don't think Hurts is healthy. I think the Eagles' pass rush is no better than the Chiefs' pass rush. It's just play bad quarterbacks. The O-line, their O-line against the Chiefs' front, I think is more of an even battle than people think. So give me the Chiefs. 34-20.
You get to wear the distinction of right about the Chiefs when we do this show next
Uh-huh.
week. If you win.
He, not just a bold pick, but a lot of bold assumptions being made too.
Yeah. I mean,
He's
listen.
right.
Hey, I will come to you and I will say if the Eagles have like a 7-8 sack day and the Chiefs are in trouble, I blew it. Right? Like I think it would be safer for me to take some kind of like originally I was going to go with something like 24-23, all that same kind of stuff, like 24-20. But I do feel like what will happen, kind of to Eric's point about the 6.5. I think somebody's going to get control of this. Like it feels like such an even game, and like when it gets away, like somebody has a quarter, and then they're even the rest of the way, and that ends up being a double-digit game. I don't know. One team's going to have a quarter, then another one's going to have a quarter, or they're just going to match. It feels like this is the kind of thing that if you play 10 times, it might be 5-5, but I don't think they're all 1-point games. I think there's plenty of games. One team wins by 10, one team wins by 13.
Yeah, I think one team is much better than the other. I actually don't know which one. Like that's like I could see a blowout in either direction too. I think if you're betting, bet the alts. On the team you like, bet them like -9.5 for like big money, right?
And I quoted you. I'm going to quote Jeff as another reason why I like him. And Jeff said early on in the year this team has to start taking the ball away, and they now have taken it away 8 times in the last 4 games, 12 times in the last 7, and 16 times in the last 10. So if you want to take the momentum, 1.6 a game for the last 10. It's 12 in the last 7, almost 2 a game. For the last 7 and 2 a game for the last
and every game except for the first Bengals game in the last 10, I think they've at least gotten one turnover in every game, and they've won all the games that they've gotten a turnover in. And like I think it is instructive that the only game they lost in that stretch was one where they didn't get a turnover and they still should have won. Like in that game, they had a lead down the stretch in that game. They probably shouldn't have won. They were outplayed by the Bengals, but like it matters to your point.
Yeah, and it falls on my X factor. I think Steve Spagnuolo is what's going to determine this game, and I'm going to put my money on that he gets it done in this game. I think that's where it has to play. So we'll see if we're right. Gentlemen, I know you got work to do down there in Phoenix. We'll let you get back to work. For Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network. Keep checking out all their great coverage. Jeff is everywhere down there at NFL.com as well. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. We tell you thank you very much for joining us on Red, Gold, and Bold. We're back at it tomorrow night with our 2 Deep, more on the Eagles, more on this game. We do it tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central. Thanks for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.